Whether you're a frontline supervisor just starting out, a seasoned manager, or sitting in the director's chair, I want you to go ahead and pull up a chair. Today, we're taking a seat at the table to look at a high-stakes leadership simulator. Now, you might usually associate this with a late-night game with your buddies or a crowded casino floor. Yeah, we're talking about poker. But look, we aren't talking about gambling today. We're talking about pure leadership development. In this explainer, we're going to explore how the mechanics, the mindset, and that intense, high-pressure environment of a poker game perfectly mirror the daily executive decisions you have to make to command your team, navigate complex organizational structures, and actually drive results. So let's be real for a second. There's this huge common misconception that poker's just a game of luck. You know, a purely bluffing and gambling endeavor where you basically just cross your fingers, shove your chips in the middle, and hope for the best. Let's totally debunk that myth right now. While chance inevitably plays a role in any single isolated hand, long-term success at the poker table, that's driven by the exact same ironclad discipline, rigorous strategy development, and adaptability that you need to run a highly successful corporate department. The cards you're dealt are entirely out of your control, but how you play them, that's entirely up to you.
And that brings us to the core thesis of our discussion, which is summed up perfectly in this quote right from our source material. In many ways, poker serves as a compressed, real-time simulation of the challenges leaders face every day. I mean, really let that sink in for a minute. Imagine staring down a multi-million-dollar acquisition, or maybe a critical hiring decision, and you've got incomplete data and literally only minutes to decide. That is the exact same physiological and psychological pressure a pro feels at the final table. Every single hand is a project. Every betting round is a vital business decision. In just a matter of minutes, a player goes through the complete life cycle of strategic planning, risk assessment, human dynamics, and execution. It's basically a masterclass in management compressed right into a single deck of cards.
So here is our playbook for this explainer. We're going to map 8 distinct poker skills directly to your managerial competencies across 5 key areas. First, cultivating the inner drive. Second, strategy and analytical execution. Then, listening and building relationships. Fourth is adapting and calculated risk-taking. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the ultimate leadership hand.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, cultivating the inner drive. Because before any cards are dealt, success starts entirely with your internal mindset. At its core, both poker and leadership heavily reward those who have a genuine desire to win. And this brings us to the first of our 8 distinct skills, true competitiveness. Now, true competitiveness isn't about crushing your opponents or feeding your ego. It's actually about striving to be better than you were yesterday. The best poker players out there? They study constantly, they review their inevitable mistakes, and they ruthlessly push themselves to refine their edge. As a leader, you need that exact same internal drive. You've got to set undeniably high standards for yourself and your team, completely refusing to settle for average outcomes. When you channel this competitiveness correctly, it goes from a selfish pursuit into this incredible driving force that elevates the standards of every single person around you. Hand in hand with that competitiveness is our second critical skill, mindfulness and focus. Picture a pro fully engaged in a high-stakes game. You've got ringing slot machines, chatter from the rail, flashing lights. But for them, it all completely fades into the background. Their attention is locked with laser precision on the players, the bets, and the rhythm of the game. Now, for managers and directors navigating a chaotic business environment, this is an absolutely indispensable skill. I mean, think about your average Tuesday. The endless Slack notifications, the unread emails piling up, the office politics. Your ability to just block out that relentless corporate noise, stay intensely present under pressure, and focus solely on the immediate task at hand, that directly leads to clear, decisive execution and drastically reduced stress. Moving right along to Section 2, strategy and analytical execution. This is where we shift from that internal mindset to the hard analytical tools you need to navigate complex situations. Every single decision you make in poker, whether you're folding, calling, or raising, has to be rooted in strategy. Good players do not just react impulsively to the cards in front of them. They operate within a much broader architecture. And that introduces our third skill, strategic anticipation and execution. This completely mirrors the corporate strategy development process. First up is preparation. You have to study the situations outside of the boardroom so you can actually perform when the heat is on. Second is anticipation. This is about thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead. If a key supplier goes bankrupt next month, what's your immediate pivot? You have to adjust as new information arrives. And third, execution. Look, developing a pristine corporate plan is one thing, but executing it flawlessly when the pressure is absolutely suffocating, that's where true leadership is forged.
Poker is this fascinating, highly unique blend of cold, hard math and nuanced human behavior. Which brings us to our fourth skill, synthesizing math and psychology. On the math side, you're calculating pot odds, evaluating massive financial risks, and making statistically sound decisions based strictly on hard data. But then on the psychological side, you're reading human beings. You're interpreting timing, recognizing behavioral patterns, and spotting subtle cues. Think about your daily role as a director or manager. You've got your complex spreadsheets, your KPIs, your quarterly projections, but you also have to navigate team morale, personal motivations, and, let's say, a key stakeholder's sudden awkward silence in an important meeting.
And navigating both of those sides creates the absolute need for what we call the dual capability leader. Frontline supervisors and senior executives alike absolutely must synthesize both raw data and interpersonal dynamics. Data and analytics, they're essential to your survival for sure, but they are literally only half the equation. You have to understand human motivation. The absolute strongest leaders, much like the most lethal poker players, know exactly when to rely heavily on the numbers and exactly when to just look up from the spreadsheet, read the room, and trust their gut instinct on the people sitting right in front of them. That human element bridges us perfectly into Section 3, listening and building relationships.
I want to challenge you directly right now. Are you observing, or are you just waiting to react? This highlights our fifth skill, active observation. A super common, often fatal mistake in poker, and frankly in management too, is acting way too quickly without fully understanding the reality of the situation. It's just human nature to want to jump in and solve a problem the exact second it lands on your desk. But impulsive reactions almost always create larger, way more dangerous blind spots down the road.
The reality is, the absolute best players spend far more time observing than they do actually playing hands. They just sit back, watch how others behave, identify patterns, and gather critical information before they ever push a single chip into the middle. We have all seen that manager who fires off a massive, angry reply-all email before even understanding the entire thread, only to have to walk it back and apologize later. Don't be that player. Strong leaders listen first. They observe team dynamics, they understand different perspectives, and they fiercely resist that urge to react impulsively. By taking the discipline and the time to fully process a situation, your decisions become significantly more informed, respected, and effective. Because despite its highly competitive nature, poker is actually a deeply social environment, which leads to our sixth skill, relationship building and empathy. Your success depends on understanding others, how they think, how they react to stress, how they communicate. Over time at the table, you build relationships and you learn how to map all these diverse personalities. Well, leadership is fundamentally the exact same thing. It's entirely about people, fostering collaboration, navigating violently clashing personalities, and building rock-solid trust in a high-pressure environment. Those are non-negotiable skills for any director or manager. Poker just gives us a dynamic, proven framework for mastering that social awareness.
All right, moving into Section 4, adapting and calculated risk-taking. This is where leaders deal with evolving realities, put their chips on the line, and make the hard calls.
One of the most powerful lessons poker teaches is our seventh skill, adaptability, which is essentially just real-time change management. No two tables are ever the same. Players come and go, chip stacks shift rapidly, and the dynamics evolve constantly with every single hand dealt. Think of this as your corporate environment. Organizations are rarely static, right? Your teams change, a sudden reorg shakes up the whole department, Q3 budgets get slashed without any warning, or unexpected market challenges just arise out of nowhere. Effective leaders do not resist this change, they anticipate it. They train themselves to stay incredibly flexible, reassess situations on the fly, and remain completely composed, even when the ground is literally shifting beneath them.
And this brings us to our eighth and final skill, calculated risk-taking. There is a delicate, absolutely critical balance leaders have to strike here. If you're always just playing it safe, avoiding all conflict and risk, the result is stagnation. In poker, we call this blinding out. You're basically slowly bleeding your resources until you have absolutely nothing left. On the other extreme, if you make reckless decisions, the result is severe organizational damage. It's much like an uncalculated emotional all-in that just busts you right out of a tournament. The sweet spot is calculated risk. That's what leads to massive growth. Think of a bold poker bluff where a player correctly reads weakness in their opponent to win a huge pot. In the corporate world, this is identical to launching a disruptive new product line exactly when your competitor hesitates. You've got to weigh the scenarios, evaluate the potential outcomes, and then act. At the end of the day, poker and leadership both heavily reward boldness, but only when it is calculated. Boldness is having the absolute, unflinching courage to act decisively when the moment is right, In business, you are rarely, if ever, going to have 100% of the information. Outcomes will often be highly uncertain, but as a leader, you must build the confidence to make those tough calls anyway. And you build that confidence through deep preparation, active observation, and trusting the groundwork your team has laid. You simply cannot be paralyzed by the fear of losing a hand if the data and your read on the situation tell you it's the exact right time to strike.
Let's wrap this up and synthesize the playbook in our final section, the ultimate leadership hand.
When we look at the parallels we've covered, they are undeniably clear. A great poker player and a winning leader share the exact same DNA. They both commit fiercely to continuous learning, utterly refusing to just rest on past laurels or outdated strategies. They remain remarkably composed in the face of chaos and uncertainty. They consistently make thoughtful, strategic decisions rather than giving in to emotional, knee-jerk reactions. And maybe most importantly, they treat every single session, every massive project, and every painful failure as a critical lesson for future growth. By applying these 8 skills from the felt to the boardroom, your leadership becomes fiercely intentional.
I want to leave you with this foundational quote from our source text because it is truly the bedrock of everything we've discussed today. Both poker and leadership come down to the same principle, making the best possible decision with the information available and having the discipline to do it consistently. It really is that straightforward, isn't it? But man, it takes a lifetime to truly master. It is all about stripping away the raw emotion, trusting your grueling preparation, and executing with unyielding discipline time and time again.